Alright guys, I'm going to talk about the tier list for Another Eden. It's going to be a lengthy video, so buckle down. Hopefully you guys have something to do or to eat as we dive into quite a volatile subject matter, since Another Eden has changed a lot since the beginning of the game when I first started. Essentially, in the beginning of the game from 1.0 to pretty much like 2.0 time frame, it was mostly just fight the enemy or the boss, build up AF, and then try to AF the enemy down with as much damage as you can. Then it turned into the turn 2 another force meta, which is still dominant in today's time for Another Eden, but some of the mega super whales in the Japan server are doing something where they would apply all the debuffs and buffs first and then pretty much try to another force as soon as possible to kill these sort of mega bosses. And some of these newer units that WFS have released have really accelerated the numbers a lot. And it's just to show you that they've given up on sort of balancing the game, and a lot of the older characters are definitely left in the dust for now, and maybe in the future when they go around and give them another styles or manifest weapons, or even manifest weapons for their another styles, hopefully that'll fix some of the power creep. But the power creep is definitely there, and it has shown its face quite significantly. So before we begin, I would really like to thank Anoharu and Paolo from the Discord server, as they've helped me by giving me some information and their own feedbacks onto this game as well. So a lot of this tier list is a amalgamation between our three judgments. Since there are 102 5-star characters, one being a 4-star but can deal up to 5-star damage, which I've included him as well. So I just wanted to preface with that. So let's go over the future Grasta enhancements, because right now Grasta in this game is a huge power spike boost in this game. I'm not going to read every single one on these points. You guys can pause and read them at any time, but just know that pretty much Grastas can replace an entire unit that would have been really good in, early on in the game, whereas now later on in this game, you can just equip a very powerful Grasta to do one of the unit's job. And here is the second page of future Grasta enhancements. You can even awaken the Grastas to give extra 300 health points or 30 mana, 20% healing, 15% crit rate, 15% magic crit rate, or you can choose, one additional effect per Grasta, such as increasing damage by 50% when you have a status ailment on the enemy, 10% damage when hitting weakness, removing all status when you swap to the back row, transferring buffs to the back row, pretty much like Seti and other style. You can even have a hold ground Grasta, which when you have maximum HP once per battle, enemy encounter rate up, enemy encounter rate down, 30% extra damage when facing 2 or more enemies, 15% damage, but all the mana cost will increase by 50%. That is quite a lot of incremental increases in this game. And I would also like to talk about in 2.6, they're going to be adding the new elemental types, Shadow, Lightning, and Crystal. Since there are currently only 3 units, one representing each new elemental type that's added to the game, Chiruru, Victor, and Mistria. These units also represent dual elements as well, so they're not just strictly a single new type of unit, such as Chiruru is Shadow and Fire, Clark, which is one of the newer units, is Earth and Crystal, Victor is Lightning and Wind, and Mistrea is Crystal and Wind. And as you can see here, outside of Crystal being neutral to all the older elemental types, they did think about, the fact that Chiruru might be a little bit broken, which she is. For older content, they did make the manifest boss fights and a lot of the older bosses resistant to Crystal, to try to curb her power level a little bit, but she's still gonna hit a ton. And I just also wanted to make a note of the new Lunatic mode that will be included in the 2.6 update. Lunatic mode is in the replacement of the auto attack skill. It takes 1 turn to activate and it lasts for 3 turns. Shadow Lunatic converts all of Chiruru's endurance and spirit and converts it to power. Lightning Lunatic gives an additional lightning hit based on the number of hits on the move, with each additional hit contributing to adding 1% to the another force percentage modifier. And Crystal Lunatic double hits with each move but does not reset your another force cooldown until the animation of the second attack is done. The second move increases the another force percentage but does not increase the another force bar. Alright, now with that said and done, let's go over to the tier list maker here. So, let us begin filling this board up with all 102 units here. Alright, so let's go by order based on the pictures here. Akane Another Style, is a solid A tier user. She's still, at release, she was the hardest hitting physical fire DPS, but she's now fallen off a bit. She's still very useful when used together with Tsukiha Another Style, so we're going to be putting her into A tier. So just to preface also with what these tier lists mean, double S just means they are the meta units, that they sort of define their roles to the maximum extent that where this game is at currently. S tiers are very good top units as well, maybe not as high as double S, but they are considered one of the best units that you can get in the game as well. A tier are very good and great units. They can be used in any team comp pretty much, and they will carry their own weight. B units are just good units. This is where some of the free to play, maybe some story characters fall under. Just overall pretty good units to use. C tier is more of a slightly below average, definitely needs buffs to help them out. And then D tier is pretty much the bottom of the barrel. They really need to give them buffs to be even considered making them a part of the rest of the tier list. And the meme tier list, I'll explain that when we get to the character. Alright, now next up is Aldo. He's our main protagonist. He's still great. You could use his Valor chant a lot, so I'm actually going to be putting him into the A tier as well. Very usable unit still. Altana, she has some decent slash and neutral bow pierce attacks, but low multipliers will be keeping her at C. Amy is still a very usable wind free-to-play story character that's great to help build a budding wind team, so we're going to be putting her under B. Annabelle Another Style is the current metal water zone deployer while being able to remove any active stance. Is one of the hardest hitting units in the game as well. She pretty much can replace Yuno Another Style on a water elemental team, so she will be going to the double S tier. Annabelle, unfortunately, she still lacks the stats and utility to consider her for any endgame team for now, but she is a waifu, so we're going to put her under C tier because maybe you need a tank to tank something. Alright, next we have Azami. Still a solid wind slash attacker. With maxed manifest, her multipliers still allow her to push out some good damage, so we'll give her the A tier. Bertrand is underutilized due to tanks not being favored in most Another Eden content. However, some recent super bosses released in Japan have him being utilized for being able to tank around 12k damage, as he can go up to 10k plus HP. So with that said, we're going to give him the A tier. Byakuya was a higher tiered wind unit, but is now considered too slow to set up for her damage output to be realized compared to the newer units released. Maybe Another Style or Manifest can help her in the future, so she is going to be a B tier unit. Vivette. Vivette's tier position relies on her being able to maximize her and maintain her max HP for her incineration effect, where she does more damage upon full HP. She can be a good fire mage with some heals coupled with Rosetta's Another Style's magic zone, so she's going to be tentatively put into B tier with a low S to A tier damage output under her ideal conditions. Now, with that said, I do want to also say that with the introduction of Rosetta Another Style and the Magic Zone, if you have her, she pretty much brings all of the tier list for mages up by 1 tier, just because of how good Magic Zone is. It'll increase all the mages' speed and damage output and critical damage done. So keep that in mind for all the mages going forward. Alright, next we have Serene. She is still a great wind damage dealer. Free to play, you can farm her light pretty easily to give her even more power, so she's still, in my opinion, an A tier unit. Seti Another Style is mediocre, C tier. In fact, like I said earlier, there's Grastas that kind of does what he does, so unfortunately, C tier. Seti is also very niche outside of his mana and debuff. None of his kit is a guaranteed thing as well, which makes him not as, solid usable as the other units, but we'll give him a B tier. Chiruru, the new 2.6 Shadow Fire unit, her ridiculous firepower while also having access to Lunatic mode. She can hit up to 532 million per hit at the end of another force when enabled in Slash Zone with Victor, does the large majority of DPS in Slash Zones. So with that said, double S tier. Seo Another Style pretty much turns Seo into a Earth Piercer bow monster. His bread and butter skills like Vivette provides elemental resistance down, and Espressivo gives Earth members 30% bonus damage, 50% damage up for bow users, and 50% critical damage. Also has a 100% plus modifier per debuff type, up to 400% modifier, in contrast to Isuka, Hozuki's 50% modifier. This guy is packing and even out damages Nagi Another Style, so he is easily a double S tier unit. Next we have Original Seo. He's a mediocre unit, but can give plus 10 power to Seo Another Style when maxing his board, but D tier. Claude Another Style is the first wing zone provider, inclusive for any win team, base team if you do not have Vienna Another Style. He has decent damage output, but if you use him mainly for his win zone, can be used alongside with Vienna Another Style for his 40% attack up, used in top meta win teams as well, so he is an S tier, not an SS. Claude Original is still a good unit. His Manifest weapon provides 70% critical damage up, speed, and piercing down. Provides decent debuffs, especially with some of the newer units providing more support for bow users to bring their damage up. He's actually considered a god tier, double S tier pierce unit. A tier for now, with nearing double S levels of damage under the right condition. So we're going to give him the A tier. Cynthia is a winged sword user that brings a lot of damage output, not the highest, but enough to stand her ground. Her caveat makes her attack element change depending on the zone being active is fairly unique. She also buffs her team's wind damage by 30% while lowering the power of all enemies, and her Ephemery Van skill is based on her intelligence. So with that, she is a S tier. Plus, she's a great looking waifu unit. Cyrus, our katana using frog user, has a nice upgrade with his Crescent Shadow weapon, but even with the heavy investment of about 2 months to upgrade it to plus 10, his damage numbers for a water unit are outscaled by the newer units, so he is a B tier unit. Deadree, the free 5-star coming out in the 2 Nights update, applies team-wide guaranteed pain and 70% power up and physical debuff down. She's a top Earth DPS for free-to-play players post-Manifest, so she is an easy S tier with the wrong artwork, but whatever. Dewey, he's useful for water teams in long fights with his 50% plus water buff, so he's pretty much an A tier unit. Dunaris, a very useful generalist that fits in all team comp if you lack a 100% crit settler. He is a S tier unit. Alga Another Style. Her skills provide incremental, small increases instead of the bulk buffs and debuffs that most of the units on the tier list provide. Unfortunately, she is just too weak. She is a D tier unit with a pretty high tier level artwork, in my opinion. However, her Alga counterpart is she has guaranteed pain, speed scaling like Kikyo, stacking speed buff, slash resistance, debuff stacks up to 50%. She's a powerhouse in the current Another Eden slash zone meta, a null Felmina in other words. She is a high S tier unit. Iwan is a selfish DPS, hits hard, A tier. Felmina, another style, is the shiny hunter. Love her design, but definitely is not a meta unit. But because she is a shiny hunter, that makes her a little bit better than just a D tier, so C tier. Felmina Original is still one of the hardest hitters in the game in 2-turn Another Force, even with Hina's release, so she is considered a low SS tier unit. Faran, another style, is the Pierce Zone Settler, does up to 16 times critical modifier with all 4 Tiger Spirit orbs stacked. Also gives team-wide crit and heal. Fits in both Slash and Water Zone to replace Yuno, another style, double S tier for sure. Garyu, another style, his Fire Zone's very selfish and is an inferior provider compared to Hardy, who gives critical power up. But since he is a zone provider, he is an S tier unit. Garyu, his shadow can be farmed to max and can have very high damage output, much higher than his Another Style counterpart, might I add. With the current meta, he does require Rosetta Another Style to be pushed into the S tier, so we're giving him the A tier. So Gildana is in his own tier by himself, the meme tier. If you build a team around him, he is definitely double S. He can 2-turn Another Force stuff like the Shion Another Style Manifest fight or the Magic Ball Super Boss. However, is a bit of an RNG dependent since his power scales with the number of allies dead on the field. So that's why he deserves to be in the meme tier. Next, we have Hardy, very strong zone settler with his 20 to 80% increased physical critical power depending on the number of fire moves. Should be used together with Tsukiha, another style, and Renri, another style, to maximize fire zone DPS. Easy double S. Helena is an average to below average Earth, null DPS, C tier. Hina, she has a Pierce extra large Valor chant, blunt attack based on speed difference, slash attack, speed down. She gives Felmina OG a run for her money and is one of the coolest looking units released recently. She'll actually do 3 times more damage than Felmina when properly set up, as she has a 10 times damage modifier if she is 5 times faster than the speed of the enemy. So double S tier, no problem. She has like the coolest artwork in my opinion in the game so far. His meta, still very good to this day. One reason why her tier list position has been lowered is because her Rosa Zeus skill takes too long for her animation and the damage windup. But she's still considered a top tier A unit in my opinion. Would have been an S, but Hina exists now for Pierce Valor Chant farming. Hozuki, her speed is molasses and she isn't the damage over time boss killer that she was released. See, another style is basically what she's supposed to be at this game at this time, so she is a D tier. Ilulu, cute but low multipliers, showing the era this character was pushed out versus what AA is now, D tier. Isuka, another style, needs severe buffs, fantastic design, but her kit's just too awkward to use and is not good at all compared to the rest on this tier list, D tier. Isuka has no guaranteed anything, really hinders her. Her Valor Chant's still good. If she's able to land all her debuffs though, she would be higher, so she is considered an A tier user. Joker has decent neutral attacks, has cool moves that coincides with his Tokachev gun and series. He is considered B tier. Leclair, another style, does needs buffs, but her damage output is just a little better than most of the D tier units, so we're going to give her a C tier. For Kikyo, she's still considered the best quote-unquote tank in the game due to her clone and how she could set up and tank massive amounts of damage. Also, she does outdamage original Suzette with 3 speed stacks, so she is a solid S tier unit. Next up, we have Leclair. Leclair has a guaranteed poison provider. She's a budget another style Nike without the same damage output, B tier. Levia needs buffs, maybe a manifest, D tier. Lokito and other styles a very good farmer in Earth teams. He has Hold Ground, which is useful for cheesing mobs, along with his permanent intellect down orbs, A tier. And with that being said, Lokito is a very strong fist comp post-manifest, but he's not as good as another style Lokito in farming and boss clearing, B tier. Next we have Lovely, who's still a decent fire debuffer, but a weaker manifested Tsukiha, B tier. Mana is still a very strong debuffer and support, slightly harder to use now as there are more bosses with both magic and physical attacks, so she is a tier unit. Mario, another style, is a average healer now. You know, her revive is fairly niche. She has what's called a 3-slot syndrome, where there's too many good moves with too little slots, B tier. Mario is still a very good healer, with Holy Light now being an area of effect and gives team-wide magical crit with her manifest. With Rosetta another style, Magic Zone, it will push her higher. Her 3 slots gives her more options than her another style counterpart. She's an A tier. Melina and other style skill sets are average, but her kit is awkward since her attacks are physical while being a magic support. Her Valor Chant with the new healing system Grasta stacks up to 30%, may push her up a tier. She is B tier. And with her original, she's an average unit as well, B tier. Mighty another style, his crit buffs are covered by original Mario, low C or very high D, he's just too slow. Mighty, with his self-stacking buffs and help with Rosetta another style, he's a good to great unit, just slow as well, B tier. Mystria does very strong damage with Crystal Lunatic, however, does suffer from very long animations in her Crystal attack. Very good against the new horror with 40 plus million HP that has to be farmed. She is a double S tier. Miyu she's just coming too short on this list, D tier. Morgana, he's a good winged unit that offers 1500 health, healing capabilities. Valor Chant is good against Earth Elemental fights, and the multipliers are decent for a free unit, so he is a B tier unit. Myris, another style, top tier mage unit that gets better at 0 mana since she gets a 16 times multiplier for her damage output. She is an S tier unit. Myris original is a good supporter with utility but slow as well. She would be an A tier unit. Mayunfa remains one of the strongest zone settlers to this day with her Valor Chant buff. Can be used in slash and pierce zones with a fully upgraded Valor Chant Grasta to enable crit memes for the other teams. She is a double S tier unit. Nagi, another style, remains one of the top Earth DPS in the game with the help of the new Tempura Axe that has a 15% pain scaling and chance to inflict type down resist, but still a little slow and requires juggling skills in another force to maximize her power output. S tier. Nagi is very niche with her intellect down and suffers from very slow speed, C tier. Nike, another style, does very strong amounts of damage while applying guaranteed team-wide pain. She is a must for water zone teams at this time, so she is a S tier unit. Philo, modifiers are just too low and he doesn't bring anything unique to the table that other units offer. Maybe another style will bring him higher, but he is a D tier unit at the moment. Primaya is great for one-shotting bosses, but she needs a manifest. She has Slash and Pierce down, which is nice, and Annihilate needs a buff, to be honest. Her damage output isn't very high, so we'll give her a low ear tier. Radica needs a manifest desperately, so D tier. Radius, she suffers from 3-slot syndrome, and her skill debuffs are not guaranteed outside of Rage and Taunt, and needs to play tap-tap to maximize her damage output in another force. She's currently the only Slash Zone provider, so she would be a low SS unit until the next Slash Zone is released. That could be better. Renri, another style, is still one of the hardest hitting fire units in the game, although with the recent competition being released, she's now considered low SS. Renri, with Max Manifest, her Pain, and 20% debuff type scaling up to 100%, and AoE guaranteed Pain along with Power and Intellect down provides utility and high damage. She is an S tier for the best girl. Rika is a story character that has low healing output. She's there if you absolutely need a healer and don't have any other users, or if you want to do an MC only run. She's considered C tier. Rosetta, another style, is a Magic Zone provider. She single-handedly is carrying Magic users right now with her release. She provides the 25% magic damage per 100 max MP and passively gives 20 to 80% staff buff depending on the number of magic moves. She's a must-have unit if you want to run Magic Team at the highest levels. Easy, SS tier. Rosetta is a good option for Fire Team due to the lack of sustained, decent fire DPS, and she's a healer that gives status immunity. A good unit overall, A tier. Runa, another style, is very niche for multi-hits that's no longer as important in zones, but very good at recharging the AF bar against the recent 100 million HP Japan super boss with 20 hit shield that's weak to wind. So she's kind of niche, C tier. Saki, another style, is also another niche unit against fire teams, C tier. Shani, another style, her position got shifted down because of the water DPS competition. She has decent power output if she has her setup going, so she's much a tier unit. Shani, she has good water utility to support water teams. 2 debuff requirement to increase her damage makes her an overall better all-rounder compared to another style counterpart. She is a S tier unit. Shannon, another style, is an S tier unit as well. Increases number of hits depending on debuffs on enemy up to 4 bonus, 6 total hits, and she inflicts 1 type of debuff each turn from Pierce, Slash, Blunt to Physical. So, S tier, baby. Shannon, just put her at D tier, she's not very good. Shigeri is pretty much Water Shion. His animations are a bit slow, so he is C tier. Next we have Shion, another style. He's a pretty strong null DPS post another style manifest, suffers from lack of guaranteed rage while having Rage Punisher on his attack that now stacks orbs instead of relying on his counters, so he is an A tier unit overall. Shion is a below average fire DPS that suffers from long animations, C tier. He can join Shigeri. Sophia has an AoE hold ground, can be useful in certain contents, B tier. Suzette, another style, requires a poison set, but she excels at controlling the another force, with the longer another force being better. She is a low SS tier unit. Suzette has very nice wind AoE, still has one of the best units for wind damage dealers. She is a solid S tier unit. Tiramisu is mainly used for a value of AoE clearing mobs, so her solo damage output is lackluster though, but she is a solid A tier unit. Tula, another style, is not very great. She needs a manifest or buffs, D tier. Tuvo is an average mage, can go up with Rosetta, another style, C tier unit. Tsubame is a great unit still, mainly due to her null attacker, but Alga manifest can pretty much replace her. She's fast and is good at bossing, so we'll give her the A tier. Tsukiha, another style, is the fire boss. She increases speed by 60%, katana user damage 60%, and critical rate up to 100% in 1 to 4 moves when used with increased Rashojin stacks. Flame Demon Razikumon, names are tentative, deals insane multiplier damage that scales with her speed even, and Rashojin stacks. Tsukiha is a strong fire support, 60% fire debuff that does above average damage. Still suffers from her fire debuff move being null post-manifest, but has a 3 times modifier bonus when above 80% health, with critical power-up is a A tier. Vayna, another style, she's the meta win zone unit provider. She has a guaranteed crit on her offensive move, high damage output, AoE poison, cleanse, and heals with maximum HP buff. She is an all-rounder unit that replaces Claude another style and Dunaris' role in win zone. She is a double S tier unit. Vayna is lackluster, needs buffs, D tier. Victor is primarily used to increase another force percentage to increase team-wide damage during another force. He enables Chiruru to deal meme levels of damage, double S. Next, we have Yukino, 50% bow damage up, resistance down, 30% critical damage up, one of the strongest magic dealers in Snowman form due to a stacking buff that gives 100% intellect per stack up to 3 stacks. Also has a stacking skill that increases its damage by 50% up to 400% per buff. Not hard to stack considering Grastas count as buffs, so she's able to set up quick and easily with the new Grasta Enhancements, double S tier. Yuno, another style, is good water with guaranteed crit and attack. Her VC is fantastic too, but faces competition such as Faran, another style, giving heals and critical up, so she's knocked down to S tier. Yuno suffers from 3-slot syndrome that handicaps her. She's still the best support in the game. You're forced to bring one type of debuff, Divine Utterance, and Iridescent Blessing, so she's considered high A tier on this list. Zavuro requires a 50 fear stack requirement before ramping up to good amounts of damage, so it's quite gimmicky, and the damage output is high though, but the ramp up hinders him a lot, so we'll give him the B tier. Clark, he deals around his mana levels amount of damage. However, the only thing is that he's currently only a 4-star right now, and that's pretty much restricting him. He has 8-digit damage output, close to a double S, but not quite there yet, so we're going to give him an A tier for now, until one day they decide to give him the 5-star treatment. Next we have Bria. She's good at countering Ukwaji, has hold ground that's priority, but it's only usable once compared to Sophia's, which is usable every 5 turn. The new hold ground Grasta enhancement also limits her niche, so she's considered a C tier unit. And finally, we have Jade, who is one of the best free units provided in the game. Very high damage multipliers, 400%, with guaranteed pain inflicted, and reduces peer resistance, making his own attack and other Pierce users higher. He is considered a S tier unit. Alright, and with that said, that is it for all 102 units that currently make up the majority of the 5-star lineup in Another Eden. Hopefully you guys are able to digest this and make use of this tier list. The game's always evolving, but usually those that stay in the SS tier stay there. I mean, at most they'll be knocked down to S tier, but they're still considered very good. In future updates, you know, obviously the meta is volatile. They could just release a manifest that could fix a unit in the lower tier problems, or they could just release another unit that is blatantly broken or has stacks upon stacks of skills on top of them. So yeah, with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this tier list. It's a lot more different but more traditional to what a tier list video would look like compared to my older videos. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.